Let's put those questions to our front bench panel. Former BC Premier Christy Clark, she's now senior advisor with Bennett Jones, former Toronto Mayor John Tory, and CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair. Welcome to you all. Christy, let's start with you. What do these numbers say to you right now?
Mike, you know, let me start with this. I was, I think, 22 points behind in the polls when the writ was dropped in BC, and I improved the government majority substantially, won over 50 seats in our legislature, and became the premier. So, Mike, I look at these polls that are a year and a half maybe before the election must be called, and I think, you know, people need to take it with a grain of salt because things can change. Having said that, though, I think that the really kind of interesting thing about the polling is that people aren't really turning on the Liberals as much as they're turning on Trudeau. So it suggests kind of three possible outcomes. One, things could go swimmingly well for the Conservatives. They make no mistakes. The Liberals don't attack them, and they win a massive majority based on, and these numbers hold. Two, Trudeau could stick around and lose massively, kind of a Michael Ignatieff level loss, or the Liberals could replace their leader and potentially have a big win out of that. Maybe not. Didn't work for the Conservatives when Kim Campbell came on. But it's very hard to parse these numbers at this point, especially keeping in mind that Trudeau doesn't need to win a majority. Last two times he's won a plurality, one of them with the lowest plurality in Canadian history. So he doesn't need a majority, he needs a minority. We're a year and a half away, and it's really him that's the unpopular one. The Liberals could do something about that if they wanted to. That might really change their fortunes.
John, he's the unpopular one, but at the same time, this party has really been built around him. I mean, it was identified very clearly in 2015 as the Trudeau Liberals. Is there a time for them to turn this around at all, even with him at the helm? And I only say that because a leadership campaign would likely split up the party because you'll have, different camps and different factions. And a lot of these people who would be looking for leadership or have leadership aspirations are sitting in the front benches with some serious portfolios.
Well, it's interesting, Christy mentioned Kim Campbell, and you could also mention John Turner. So there are times when you'd say lots of time, exciting leadership convention, but that people either finish the job of voting out a party they don't want, or no matter whether there's a new leader or not, and so on. So you can speculate on all of that. The bottom line is there's time left. I used to say lots. I'm now sort of changing that a bit because the clock ticks and we have this discussion every month when these polls come out. And I think, the time is going by, and what they need, more so than anything else, I think, is they need to create a bit of a perception of change. I don't know how they do that in their budget without spending a lot more money, which I don't think they should do. Secondly, they really, really, really need to have some help from the economy where, because I think a big part of what's driving this is people's angst and anger and anxiety about affordability and related issues. I think they need that. And then thirdly, they need to stop these constant eruptions that go on. The latest one being, what was it this past week? It was some further revelations with regard to ArriveCan, I guess. But there just seems to be something every week that stops them from gaining any positive momentum. Those things have to happen, or they won't be able to turn it around because they've got a lot of good things they've done. The pharmacare, I heard somebody saying to me on the dental care last week that their mother got a letter in the mail and they filled everything out and are getting something for it. These are good things that people will appreciate, but that's getting overshadowed by all the rest of this.
Yeah, Tom, stop the self-inflicted wounds and right the ship. But, it feels like they are running out of racetrack here.
Well, I agree with both of my colleagues. When Christy says that the problem, if you look at the numbers deeply past few months, it is mostly about Trudeau. It's almost as if Canadians are saying, the Liberal brand is not over, but they're trying to say to Mr. Trudeau, you just can't be there anymore. And Trudeau doesn't listen to what John Tory just said, because Trudeau, in the little clip that we had, he said it twice. We will continue. We will continue. And what Canadians have been trying to tell him is, we don't like what you've done. We don't like what you've done. We don't think you did well on a lot of key things with affordability, with housing. Don't keep telling us that you're going to continue. That only makes it worse. So that's the new narrative that John was talking about. They haven't created one, and I don't think they're going to be able to create a new narrative or a new tone with Justin Trudeau. It is that tone indeed, that dulcet tone where he's talking to a slow child and he's explaining to Canadians why he's right and they're wrong and he's going to continue. I think the Canadians have had enough of that. And I think that's why Nanos' numbers are showing what they're showing now. Yes, we're perhaps a year away from the election, but if Trudeau's got to be responsible, and I believe he is, he's going to give himself maybe until June, take a measure of the situation and say he's got to pull the plug by the end of the summer. He wants to give his party time to organize and give any new leader a few months anyway to get familiar with the job and try to sell their position to Canadian voting public.
Christy, we're talking a little bit about a possible change and really trying to sort of put a different face on this. Do you think that's even possible with the budget? I know we're leading up to it, we're hearing a little bit about how they want to really sort of focus on restraint. We're hearing from defense that they're trying to trim the budgets, and all around you've heard also from Anita Anand, the president of the Treasury Board, talking about looking for that type of savings. Is it possible, do you think, with one budget, and then they'll have a second one that'll come out the year following, and that'll likely be the election budget, but do you think in that time it is possible to really try and put a different face on this government and try and change the narrative around it?
Well, it's kind of an unusual situation in that, what I'm hearing from people across the country is not everybody really likes the way that Pierre Poilievre presents. He comes across as aggressive and angry and doctrinaire often. And there are a lot of people who are, who have traditionally voted Liberal. They're fed up with Trudeau. They don't know what to do. So it literally could be, the narrative could change when there's a new face on the party, when there's a new person leading it. And I think that in itself really brings something, a sense of change. I don't think it's any secret to most viewers of your show, Mike, that people know Justin Trudeau sets this tone in almost all the decisions of this highly centralized government. I do think that getting a new face on it and then giving ministers an opportunity to actually make decisions might mean that you end up with a little more creativity around the table too. So a year and a half is a long time. And I think yes, and the answer to your question for all those reasons, I think, is yes.
You know what? You know who else it's a long time for, Mike? Is Pierre Poilievre. I mean, it's a long time to have a 20% lead, and he's had it now for a while. But I was listening to Nick Nanos' podcast on this very poll we're talking about. And, he played a clip that was, to me, a gross overreach where he was just viciously talking about Justin Trudeau as a racist. And, he was raising it in the context of the blackface thing. And I don't think most Canadians believe that today, in this day and age, as Prime Minister, that Justin Trudeau is a racist. And I think, the kind of thing, that's one instance where Pierre Poilievre might have been better to breathe through his nose and not say anything about that. And if he says things like that, and those may not be categorized as mistakes, but they're unnecessary things to say when you have a 20-point lead, that lead can start to evaporate. It doesn't take long. 5 points either way, and suddenly the lead is 10, not 20. And then you have the question of momentum that follows that.
Tom, I got last 30 seconds I can give to you on this.
Keep an eye on Quebec. 78 seats in play, very fickle, gone from massive majority for Mulroney's Conservatives to big majority for the Bloc to big majority for the NDP, that Jack Layton and I were able to get 59 seats. So that is going to be a key to this election. Pierre Poilievre's charms, to reinforce what John just said, are lost on the majority of Quebecers. Are they going to do, as they've often done in the past, simply say, who's going to win this thing? Okay, we're going there. And that would mean towards the Conservatives, if we believe the polls. Or are they going to say, we'll do anything we can to block this guy and vote massively back for the Liberals as they've done in the past? Keep an eye on that.